Hello, how are you guys doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today is Q&A day. Most of you guys who have been around for a while are familiar with this. Every couple of months, I like to do a Q&A. I put a call out on Twitter and sometimes also on YouTube on the community page for questions from you guys about all sorts of different things. We're usually focused on Nintendo, gaming, and of course, Metroid. But it's always open to all sorts of things, movies or music or whatever the case. And obviously, because Metroid Dread came out a couple of weeks ago, actually, it came out almost 1 month ago, I knew that we would be getting a lot of Metroid questions. I know you guys have a lot of things to ask me, so I definitely pulled a lot of Metroid and Metroid Dread questions, but I've got some non-Metroid questions as well, so I'm kind of trying to mix it up here the best I can. I got a ton of responses on Twitter and on YouTube. Of course, if you want to be a part of these in the future, you should definitely be following me on Twitter. I am very active. I tweet all the time. I share a lot of opinions and discussions and all sorts of stuff on gaming and Metroid, Nintendo, just everything, Star Wars, whatever. So definitely follow me on Twitter if you're not. And with all that stuff out of the way, I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Let's just jump into a couple of questions I pulled from you guys today. So we're going to start off with a couple of questions from the YouTube community tab. And the first question on YouTube comes from Michael Kaduk, who asks me, what do you think we could see in Metroid 6? I'd love it if it revolved around Samus's new Metroid powers from Dread as a gameplay mechanic like the phase-on in Metroid Prime 3. Great question, and it's a good reason for me to maybe remember to tell you guys that there might be some spoilers for Metroid Dread in this Q&A. So you might want to avoid it just in case that actually happens. I actually think that definitely will happen. Even this question basically makes me think so. So if you haven't beaten Metroid Dread, maybe don't watch this Q&A video just yet. So to answer Michael's question, which is a great one, if we get a Metroid 6, what will we see? What do I want to see happen? Talks about the Metroid powers at the end of that game coming into play. And it's tricky because, you know, we don't really know if we're going to get a Metroid 6. I would like to see a Metroid 6, but Sakamoto and Nintendo told us that Metroid Dread represents the end of this big chapter, this big story, the story of Samus and her intertwined fates with the Metroids. But they also confirmed they are working on future games and the next chapter to Samus' story. We know Metroid Prime 4 will still be coming out soon. When that game takes place, we don't know. Maybe it takes place after Dread. I would like to see that happen. And so what I'm getting at is we do know that another game will be made after Metroid Dread, but there's a chance they decide not to call them numbered Metroid games anymore. If they want to see Metroid Dread representing the end of a story, maybe the beginning of the next story is where they decide to drop the numbers altogether. And so we still can expect a game that takes place after Dread. I mean, I don't know what we could see. It goes back to a lot of the theories I've said before. You know, the big one being true was that I predicted maybe Samus would be the last Metroid at the end of Metroid Dread. That is the case. She now is Metroid. She has Metroid DNA. She can now harness some kind of Metroid energy and basically outwardly become Metroid. She can transform her suit into a Metroid suit because of that energy. And you bring up a comparison I've thought of as well for future games. And it's if basically gameplay mechanics could allow Samus to tap into that Metroid energy at will. Almost as if she could become Super Saiyan, the way Saiyans can become Super Saiyan, or, like you mentioned, the way Samus taps into the phase-on of the PED suit and can become like a phase-on powered version of herself in Metroid Prime 3. And so I think that there's a great chance that future Metroid games that take place after Dread, even if it's Metroid Prime 4, although I don't know if we would see this in that game, any game that takes place after Dread, 2D, 3D, first person, whatever, there is a chance, if not almost a guarantee, that her ability to harness that Metroid energy is a gameplay mechanic. Because it's the big thing revealed at the end of the game. It's the huge change that we know Samus goes through as a character on her journey into the end credits of that game. How could it not be one of the main core hooks of the game and the franchise going forward? I also think the X-Parasite could play a role. I think that the Chozo could play a role as far as the story goes. So there's a lot to expect, and the whole idea makes me very excited. Next question on YouTube comes from Ken Nobu, who says, would you like a paid DLC in Metroid Dread? And if yes, what would you like to see in it? This is definitely something that and I think a lot of people have thought of, because once Metroid Dread ended, I think we all wanted more. It also ended so abruptly. It's one of the few things I don't love about the game, is we went to credits way too fast after that planet blew up and she took off. It's almost so obscenely abrupt, to the point that I feel like they almost have to do DLC to maybe give us a more true kind of narrative ending. We didn't spend any time with Samus after the events of that game, and I think that that's a huge missed opportunity. And so I would like to see a whole nother area added to the map, or another planet she goes to. I mean, I guess, you can't really add an area to the map, right, if she blew the planet up. So, going to maybe some other new location, or maybe they retroactively add something to the map. I don't know. But, I just feel like there's an opportunity for more gameplay and more story and more of a true ending. And I think that with Nintendo wanting to support Metroid in such a way, and the massive hype and support around Metroid Dread, why not help continue the hype and conversation of Metroid Dread? They probably wouldn't have to spend too much money to do so, and create some kind of DLC thing that's maybe just another 4 or 5 hours worth of gameplay and some more narrative story beats. I would love to see it happen, and I think there's a bit of a chance it does. Next question on YouTube comes from Rundis045, who says, "Hey Rob, I'm a big Metroid fan, so I love the channel." Thank you so much. What's your favorite non-Nintendo game franchise? Great question. I really love this question, actually, because yes, I'm a big Nintendo fan. My 2 favorite game franchises of all time are Nintendo franchises, right? It's Metroid and The Legend of Zelda. But there are several non-Nintendo franchises that I absolutely adore. The main ones that come to mind, first and foremost, is No More Heroes. Secondly would probably be Resident Evil. Love Resident Evil. Silent Hill, The Last of Us, and Halo. Those are probably the biggest non-Nintendo franchises that immediately come to mind. I mean, it's as far as my favorite, it's a battle between No More Heroes and Resident Evil, and I don't really know which one I would say is number 1. But it's just all of those. I mean, No More Heroes, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Last of Us, Halo. Like, I just love all of those franchises so much. And there's plenty of other, plenty of other ones that I love as well, but I think those are the main ones that jump to mind. Last question from YouTube comes from Jack Cimino, or Camino. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Says, "What kind of music do you like to listen to? Also, I think there are some tracks on Trance Europe Express Volume 2 that give off Metroid Prime vibes." Okay, well, thanks for the question. I love the music question. Not too sure about the trance stuff. But I know that, the Metroid Prime soundtrack, specifically 1 and 2, is very kind of electronic. It's one of the things I love about that soundtrack, and it's one of the reasons I don't love Metroid Prime 3's score. It's not really a soundtrack, it's a score. And because I don't like how Prime 3 tried to go for like an orchestral kind of thing. I loved the electronic vibe of Primes 1 and 2. So, what kind of music do I listen to? I think if you know me or have followed me on Twitter, you know what I like, and I am a metal kid. I am a big time metal guy. I'm a metal musician. I've been playing metal drums in metal and rock bands for 20 years. I've been playing drums for 20 or 25 or however the hell long I've been doing it for. That's what I do, is I play music, I play drums, and it's all metal. Moving on to Twitter, we have a question from Diego at DiegoES2002. Very active on the channel. What's up, man? Thanks for the question. And he asks me, "What's one thing about Metroid as a whole that makes you love the franchise so much?" Well, there's a lot of answers to that. I know you're asking me for one thing. It's hard to just pick out one thing. I mean, Samus as a character is one of my favorite aspects, right? I just love her. I love her journey. I love learning about her. I love seeing what she's gone through as the game started to tell more of Samus' story. The original 3 games, Metroid, Metroid 2, and Super Metroid, really weren't telling us much about Samus. But once we got to Metroid Prime in 2002, as well as Fusion, which those 2 games released at the same time, we really started to see the story of Metroid start to tell us about Samus, and we've seen her evolve, and I love her journey. As far as the games and the gameplay, I love the fact that these games are all about the atmosphere. They make you feel so alone. Even the games that have a lot of, NPCs like Other M or Metroid Prime 3, very NPC-heavy Metroid games, you still have a lot of solitude in those games. And it's always had this kind of creepy vibe, and the atmosphere of traversing the different planets and locations in most games, especially in the Prime games. I just love that. I also love the backtracking Metroidvania aspect, which Metroid created even before Castlevania copied it. And I love that whole thing. I love Samus. I love the atmosphere. I love the music. I love the gameplay. I love the backtracking. I love upgrading to become more powerful and opening up new areas of a map you've already been exploring. It just makes me so happy inside when I think about the way Metroid games play out. First person, 3D, 2D, whatever. I love it all. Next up on Twitter comes a question from Dr. Sus at Dr. Sus Tweets, who says, how does your wife deal with your online persona, dedicating so much time to gaming, YouTube, and stuff? Great question. Thanks for the question. Of course, as of this past Saturday, I can now officially call my fiance my wife. We did, of course, just get married. I'm not wearing my ring right now. It's actually right here because I'm still adjusting to wearing a wedding ring, and it's not I don't love rings. It's just not my thing. And so she doesn't mind, she knows, and she doesn't care. But I do have my ring. And so how does she deal with my online persona? I like that question because I have a great answer. She doesn't care. She loves it. She supports it. She's a bit of a gamer and a nerd herself. She's a huge Animal Crossing fan. She loves Stardew Valley. She loves Fire Emblem Three Houses. She's put in like 300 freaking hours into that game and beaten it like 10 times. It's insane. She even likes Call of Duty and shooting games, and we sometimes play together. Mario Kart, Smash Brothers. I mean, she's not dedicated to the hobby, as a lifestyle, if you want to say, the way I almost am. But as a whole, she loves it. I was doing YouTube at the time we even met and started dating. And so it's just always been kind of a part of what I do. And I don't, you have to understand, YouTube and doing YouTube and Rule of Two Review, most other YouTubers would be different with this, but for myself, it doesn't define who I am. You guys, for, however many years you've been watching me, you've seen every week, oh, Rob is uploading videos to YouTube. So you would think I live this, but I actually don't. I'm a very busy guy. I have a very serious career that takes up most of my time. I have a couple of metal projects and metal bands and music that is my main hobby and my main focus. Big social life, spending time with my wife, and also, sometimes I make YouTube videos, and I've found a way to fit it into my life so that it doesn't, make up who I am as a person. In fact, most people who know me in real life don't even know that I do YouTube. Some of my friends very much do, and they've been following me for a long time, but many of them have no idea. Coworkers, friends, or family. And so it's not what I do. It's not my job. I have a job and a career. It pays me pretty darn well, and I've done YouTube for fun. And so it's a great question. I'm very happy with my life partner choice because she doesn't care. She actually loves and supports it. So I feel very lucky in that way. Next question on Twitter actually comes from a very long-time personal friend of mine from back home in Colorado. Brian McCord, my good buddy Brian, at Fire Bobcat. What's up, man? Asking me a question. Of course, I had to answer one of my best longtime friends' questions. And he asks me, would anything make Nintendo Switch Online worth $50 a year to you? Good question, because I have discussed how the $20 version I thought was a good value. The now $50 optional upgrade with the expansion pack is not worth $50 to me, even though the N64 is my favorite console of all time, because I just don't think the pricing makes sense and the value is there. So what would make it worth $50 a year to me? I mean, first and foremost, improving the service. Making the quality of the service and the features on par with what Sony and Microsoft offer for similar prices, because that's been my whole thing is, now that it's $50 a year, it's closer in price to the competition, so it needs to offer similar features. Not having voice chat, messaging, parties, and all of those things, it just really hurts the quality of the service. The other thing is, Nintendo likes to hang their hat on offering rotating, rentable games for Nintendo and Super NES, and by adding N64 and Genesis, they feel like that's adding to the value, and I get that. So to me, once they add something as awesome as like GameCube games or maybe even Game Boy Advance or Wii games, then we're talking. If they do that without increasing the price, absolutely, it's worth $50 to me at that point. Next question on Twitter comes from Rob at the Great Robub, who asks me, kind of random and not Metroid related, but what is your favorite M. Night Shyamalan film? I love this question because it's a movie question. Shyamalan is controversial and I have a unique take. I actually like Shyamalan quite a bit. He has made a couple of movies I really, really don't like, including his last movie, Old, I thought was just not good. But I actually like more of his movies than the ones that I dislike, and that's, I think, pretty rare nowadays. And I absolutely have a favorite Shyamalan film, and it's Signs. It's not even close. To me, Signs is a masterfully crafted alien thriller kind of think piece. I just freaking love that movie. I think the story of Mel Gibson's priest character and his family, his wife who died, and then, of course, setting that against the backdrop of an alien invasion that we don't even really see is so brilliant, and it creates such tension, fear, and dread. And I love seeing an alien invasion of Earth happen through the lens of a very, very small family in a very small town where everyone knows each other, and through the lens of somebody who was religious but is struggling with their faith, and how the alien invasion and the protection of his family informs the back and forth relationship he has with his faith. And keep in mind, I mean, I'm Jewish, but I'm not a religious, faithful person. It's not me. But I don't need to feel that in my real life to be able to relate to this man's struggle with his own faith in this movie. I think it's brilliant. I think it's very scary. I love alien stories. I think Signs is a perfect movie. Next question on Twitter comes from Mighty Ryan at Mighty Ryan1337, who asks me, the 9th gen consoles are coming up on their 1-year anniversary. That is freaking crazy to me. What are your thoughts on this generation so far? Well, I mean, it's okay, but it's not super exciting. I have a PlayStation 5. I got one on launch day. A lot of you guys know. My good friend Super Metal Dave made sure that I got one, and I am so thankful to him for that. And I do play my PlayStation 5 very often. I like the console. I like the way it runs. I like some of the games I have. I think the few exclusive I've played, for the most part, are very good. There's a couple of great ones. Xbox Series X has not been exciting to me, although I do know it's a powerful system that a lot of people enjoy just from that aspect. I'm so excited for Halo Infinite because, as I said earlier, it's one of my favorite franchises. So I'm going to be buying an Xbox Series X in the next couple of weeks here so I can play that. I mean, I have an Xbox One, but I just want to pop the seal and get the Series X at the same time I get Halo Infinite, just to have a reason to force myself into the Series X. And also assuming more good games come out next year for it. So, I mean, overall, there's really not a lot of reasons to own those consoles. Ratchet & Clank was an okay game. Demon's Souls is very good. Returnal is very, very good. Are those the only exclusives I have for the PlayStation 5? I think they are. You know, I played Cyberpunk on that, but that's not a PS5 game. And so, you know, PS5 has a couple of exclusives. I know the Medium is supposed to be okay on the Series X, but there's just nothing really selling us yet on these consoles. I will say, I love the DualSense controller on the PS5. I freaking love that thing. It's so cool. So there are some good things about it, but I think that the industry and these companies have a long way to go to justifying these new consoles. Next up on Twitter, we have a question from Hui Fam at Hui. I hope I said your name right. Who says, what is my take on David Jaffe's opinion on Dread's bad design? Boy, what a shit show that whole thing was. David Jaffe's a moron, I'm just going to say it. And it's not just because I'm a Metroid fan. That whole thing was obscene. The guy was like complaining about the fact that he can't believe you're supposed to just shoot random blocks to figure out where to go in Metroid Dread, and it's bad design. How am I supposed to know I'm supposed to shoot this block to open up a new path? And people have exposed how the smart design of Metroid Dread does give you hints on where to go and what to shoot, as well as a tutorial window that explains you need to do so. But beyond that, I have to question this man's validity. And I would normally never do this because I don't care as much about this stuff. But let's be real, this guy's a game designer, okay, for like 20, 30 years or whatever. And he's an adult man who has been playing video games for probably most of his life. The Metroid franchise is one of the oldest, most longest running video game series, pioneered a famous genre, And the game within this genre that really solidified the shooting random blocks to open up new paths, Super Metroid, is one of the most famous and popular and legendarily amazing video games of all time. If you are in the video game space, if you have been playing video games for years or even decades, and you're not already intimately familiar with one of the most famous video games ever crafted by humanity, Super Metroid, that in and of itself is like, 25 years old. How can you not understand the concept of a Metroidvania and shooting random blocks and surveying the map you're in to find new paths? This was solidified in the gaming industry and in this genre over 20 years ago. How can you be in this space and not be, like I said, intimately familiar with this game design? It's so baffling, and I hate to use the word exposed because it's cliche on the internet nowadays, but especially as a game designer, this really exposes, I think, himself and maybe what he doesn't know. I hate to be this guy, but I have a passionate opinion on this take, and I think that guy made a complete fool out of himself. And the last question from Twitter today comes from Party Queen Neon at itsneon2401, who says, for someone who's only played Dread and Super Metroid, what Metroid game do you recommend next? Well, I'm really glad you're slowly getting into Metroid for sure. And I would say there's two answers from me that I would suggest to you. One would be, if you wanted to stay in the 2D space, it's definitely Metroid Zero Mission, which is a remake of the original NES Metroid that came out in 2004. It's a Game Boy Advance game. It's on the Wii U eShop. It's awesome. To me, until Metroid Dread, it was my favorite 2D Metroid game. I gave it the slight edge over Super Metroid. So I think that if you liked Super Metroid and obviously liked Dread and you want to stay 2D, Metroid Zero Mission would be a very smooth transition. It is very short and very easy, so just know that going into it. The other game would be obvious, and it's my favorite game of all time. It's the original Metroid Prime. That game would almost feel modern to you in a way, going from the 2D games to this brand new first-person Metroid game. But the gameplay and the atmosphere and just the ambience of the music and the sounds of all the different areas you go to, so cool, so fun. Being Samus for the first time ever in a first-person setting is so cool and so fun. And you'll be surprised how well they translated the 2D Metroid worlds and gameplay into a 3D space and in first person. They really put you inside Samus's body and her face. Like, you feel like you're seeing the world through her eyes, the effects of the visor, the reflection of her face on the inside of the glass of the visor, just the first-person gameplay. It's a little bit slower, and it's not like you're using machine guns to shoot things at a super fast clip. It's not that kind of a gameplay. It is a true-to-life adventure that just plays out in first person. And you're Samus, it's Metroid, the bosses are incredible, the graphics and the music. So good, my favorite game of all time for a reason. And I think if you can appreciate a 2002 first-person game, I don't know how old you are, but if you can appreciate that era of gaming, I think you would really enjoy it. So those are my answers, Metroid Zero Mission and Metroid Prime. And so that wraps up another Q&A. I want to thank all of you for asking questions. I'm sorry if I didn't get a chance to answer your question. I can only do so many in one video. Like I said, follow me on Twitter if you want to be a part of future Q&As and conversations like that in the future. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.